Lila Bennett had always been the kind of person who blended into the background. She grew up in a small town where everyone knew each other, yet she often felt like an outsider. Though her parents were loving and supportive, their high expectations loomed over her like a thick fog, making it difficult for her to carve out her own identity. As the eldest of 3 siblings, Lila often found herself juggling familial obligations and academic pressures, trying to be the perfect daughter and student. Her friends described her as warm and reliable, someone you could count on in a pinch. However, beneath that calm exterior lay a tempest of emotions she rarely revealed. Lila was deeply introspective, prone to overthinking every interaction, constantly worried about how others perceived her. This self-consciousness spiraled into feelings of inadequacy, creating invisible walls that seemed to close in tighter with each passing day. She worked as an administrative assistant at a bustling law firm where the fast-paced environment masked her growing discomfort. To colleagues, Lila was efficient and friendly, a dependable presence in a chaotic workplace. Yet, while others enjoyed coffee breaks filled with laughter and light conversation, Lila found herself sitting quietly at her desk, feeling as if she were watching life unfold from behind glass. The walls of her internal struggle began to shift subtly, moments of anxiety crept into daily routines. As Lila navigated through mundane tasks and polite exchanges, an unsettling realization started to take root. She was trapped not by outside forces but by the confines of her own mind, a prison built by expectations she felt powerless to escape. Walls often serve as a powerful metaphor in Lila's life, embodying the isolation and emotional barriers that confine her. Throughout her childhood, she built these walls brick by brick, each expectation from her parents, every judgment from peers, and all the moments she felt invisible were added to the structure. To the outside world, Lila appeared composed and capable, but behind her cheerful facade lay a fortress of solitude that few could penetrate. In her mind, these walls felt impenetrable, creating a space where self-doubt flourished. Each time she overthought a social interaction or replayed a perceived slight in her head, the walls grew taller. They shielded her from vulnerability but simultaneously imprisoned her in loneliness. The more she sought to fit in, the more fortified her walls became, leaving her feeling like a spectator in her own life. At work, Lila's desk became a physical representation of this entrapment, a small island in an ocean of bustling activity. While colleagues chatted and bonded over shared experiences, she remained confined to her workspace, unable to bridge the gap between herself and the world around her. The laughter and camaraderie echoed like distant thunder, reminding her of what she longed for yet felt forever out of reach. These walls not only separated Lila from others but also trapped her within herself. They became a psychological barrier against genuine connection and self-acceptance, intensifying the loneliness she struggled to articulate. Each day felt like another layer added to the walls closing in around her, a silent struggle against forces both internal and external that few others could see. Every morning, Lila followed the same routine, a carefully orchestrated dance that masked her inner turmoil. She would wake before dawn, slipping out of bed as quietly as possible to avoid waking anyone. The cool air of the early morning felt refreshing against her skin, offering a brief reprieve from the weight of expectation. In her small kitchen, she brewed a cup of tea, savoring the steam rising like a gentle embrace as it filled her senses. Once dressed, Lila meticulously chose an outfit that projected confidence, a crisp blouse and tailored slacks, while inside she felt anything but assured. As she glanced into the mirror, she practiced her smile, trying to conceal the anxiety gnawing at her insides. With every step out the door toward work, part of her wished for a shield. She wanted to blend in seamlessly with the world around her while simultaneously yearning to break free from the confines of her own mind. At the law firm, Lila engaged in mundane tasks, scheduling meetings, answering calls, sorting through files, skills she performed with unfaltering competence. Yet during lunch breaks, when colleagues shared stories and laughter, her heart sank. Seated at a corner table with a book or scrolling through her phone, she felt an overwhelming sense of being an outsider peering through unyielding walls. When a coworker would invite her to join their conversation, making small talk about weekend plans or office gossip, Lila would nod and smile, but inside she felt trapped in a space where connection eluded her grasp. The laughter echoed down the hall like waves crashing against rocks. Each burst seemed to push her further into isolation. This daily routine, a mask of normalcy, shrouded the hidden struggles that continued to build their walls tighter around her heart. Lila's relationships, though seemingly strong, often left her feeling more isolated. Her parents, while loving, frequently praised her achievements and pushed her toward high standards, inadvertently reinforcing her feelings of inadequacy. They celebrated milestones with enthusiasm but rarely recognized the emotional toll it took on Lila to maintain that facade of perfection. Their encouragement, while well-intentioned, felt like an unyielding pressure that added to the walls surrounding her heart. Among her friends, Lila played the role of the supportive listener, always there to lend an ear or offer advice. However, their conversations rarely ventured beneath the surface. They were filled with light banter about life events and shared experiences. When Lila tried to express her struggles, her words often fell flat or were met with quick reassurances that everything would be fine. This lack of understanding left her feeling even more alone, as if her deepest fears and vulnerabilities were invisible to those who knew her best. At work, colleagues appreciated her reliability but often overlooked the weight she carried. They spoke openly about their lives and challenges, yet when Lila attempted to share her own feelings of being overwhelmed, their responses tended to minimize her experiences. "You're so good at handling things, you'll be fine," they'd say, inadvertently bricklaying another layer onto the walls she was so desperate to dismantle. As Lila navigated these relationships, she couldn't shake the profound loneliness that accompanied each interaction. The lack of true connection amplified her isolation, making her realize how deeply ensconced she was within the confines of her own mind, a prison built with walls unseen by others. As the weeks went by, Lila began to feel an increasing weight pressing down on her, a mounting sense of entitlement that seemed to swirl around her like a storm cloud. It was as if society mandated that she fulfill the role of the perfect daughter, dedicated employee, and supportive friend without ever considering the toll it took on her mental health. Each obligation felt less like a choice and more like a chain, pulling her deeper into a struggle she couldn't articulate. During family gatherings, her parents showcased their pride in Lila's accomplishments, narrating tales of her successes for all to hear. Yet each story left her feeling suffocated by the pressure to maintain that shining image. When they asked for updates on her career or relationships, they didn't sense her growing anxiety. Their eyes lit with expectation while Lila fought to keep up appearances, nodding along as they delighted in their curated perception of who she was meant to be. At work, colleagues began to rely on Lila's dependable nature more heavily, piling additional responsibilities onto her already full plate. When she hinted at feeling overwhelmed during meetings, their reactions were typically dismissive, joking about how well she managed everything. The laughter echoed around her like a mocking soundtrack, amplifying her frustration and sense of entrapment. In these pivotal moments, Lila felt increasingly invisible, a performer trapped in an exhausting role, her desires and needs regarded as secondary to the expectations swirling around her. With each passing day, she grappled with the unsettling realization that the walls she'd built were not just created from her insecurities but were also reinforced by every obligation others placed upon her without acknowledgement or understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Lila received a phone call that would alter her perspective forever. It was her younger sister, Emma, calling to share the news of her recent engagement. Lila felt a jolt of mixed emotions wash over her, pride for Emma's happiness, but a wave of sadness that quickly followed. As she listened to Emma share her dreams and plans, Lila felt as if she were watching someone else's life unfold through a glass wall, unable to participate in the joy that filled the air. That night, lying in bed, Lila's thoughts spiraled into deeper introspection. While her sister spoke of love and freedom, Lila became acutely aware of her own stagnant reality. The achievements she had once taken pride in now felt hollow. The perfect career and the constant accolades from friends seemed meaningless when she longed for deeper fulfillment. The walls that she had built to shield herself from vulnerability suddenly seemed like prison bars, exacerbating her feelings of entrapment. The catalyst moment was not just the engagement announcement, but rather the stark realization of how far removed she felt from a life filled with spontaneity and passion. This event served as a mirror reflecting her own limitations and suffocating obligations. As she lay awake that night, Lila grappled with the overwhelming sensation that she was losing herself in the roles that others expected her to play, a disquieting acknowledgement that only deepened her sense of isolation and despair. With each breath, the walls around her seemed to close in tighter, challenging her to confront the painful truth she could no longer ignore. Change was necessary, but the path ahead felt terrifyingly uncertain. In the days following Emma's announcement, Lila found herself slipping into a cycle of introspection that she couldn't shake off. Each morning, as she went through her routine, clinging to the familiar patterns that had once comforted her, she felt an increased weight on her chest. The ambitious goals she had set for herself now felt like outdated blueprints of a life she no longer desired. As Lila gazed out of her window at the vibrant world outside, the contrast between it and her bounded existence became starkly clear. Her thoughts often turned to moments when she'd chosen stability over spontaneity, opportunities to explore new interests or pursue relationships left untried. She began to question whether she had willingly conformed to societal expectations or if she'd simply fallen victim to the roles others had assigned to her. Every smile forced upon her face during work meetings felt disingenuous in light of this newfound awareness. One afternoon, while sitting alone in a cafe and sipping at a lukewarm cup of tea, Lila's internal conflict boiled over. She realized how deeply she longed for authenticity but felt trapped by the persona she'd crafted. The realization struck her, this facade was not just exhausting but suffocating. The walls surrounding her heart reflected unresolved fears, but they were also becoming less solid in her mind's eye. This internal battle ignited a flicker of hope as well, perhaps confronting the truth about herself might pave the way for change. As fear and desire wrestled within her, Lila understood that acknowledging her entrapment was the first step toward dismantling those high walls and reclaiming her life, a journey filled with uncertainty yet brimming with potential for liberation. Determined to break through the isolating walls she had built, Lila decided to seek help, reaching out to those she trusted most. One evening, she invited her closest friend, Sarah, over for a casual dinner. As they sat in the cozy glow of fairy lights strung across her living room, Lila hesitated, fidgeting with her fork while contemplating how to broach the subject. After some small talk, she finally mustered the courage to share her feelings of entrapment and anxiety. "I just feel so overwhelmed sometimes," Lila admitted, her voice trembling slightly. However, as she spoke, she could see Sarah's expression shift from concern to surprise and then back again too quickly. There was a palpable sense of discomfort hanging in the air as if Lila were asking for something unreasonable. "Oh come on," Sarah chuckled nervously, "you're always so composed. You manage everything so well. Maybe you're just stressed." The dismissal stung more than Lila expected. It felt as though her struggles were being reduced to mere fatigue rather than valid emotions needing acknowledgement. Later that week at work, feeling bolder after her initial attempt, Lila approached her manager during a break. She shared her struggle with feeling overwhelmed by responsibilities and her desire for more supportive communication in the team. Instead of understanding, she received a quick pat on the back and a cheerful remark about how busy everyone was, yet another wave of disconnection that only reinforced her isolation. These encounters made it painfully clear to Lila that while she yearned for connection and support, those attempts to express herself were often met with misunderstandings. Even in their sincerity, the responses from loved ones emphasized just how difficult it was for others to grasp the depth of her internal struggle, a reality that left her feeling even more isolated as she continued to battle against those invisible walls closing in around her. Amidst the swirling chaos of her thoughts, Lila experienced moments of clarity that pierced through the fog of anxiety. One such moment occurred during a quiet afternoon walk in a nearby park where the vibrant colors of autumn leaves danced in the breeze. As she paused to take in the beauty around her, something shifted within her. The realization struck hard. She had been living for others' expectations rather than her own desires. This epiphany was both liberating and terrifying. While she recognized that change was necessary to reclaim her identity, an overwhelming wave of uncertainty washed over her. What would it mean to break free from the familiar patterns she had adhered to? The thought of stepping into the unknown sent shivers down her spine, yet a flicker of resolve sparked within her, hinting at the possibility of a life filled with authenticity and genuine connection. Later that week, Lila found herself journaling late into the night. As she poured out her thoughts onto paper, she unearthed layers of unacknowledged feelings, frustration, fear, and an insatiable yearning for freedom. Each word brought clarity but also deepened her internal conflict. How could she bridge the gap between understanding what needed to change and actually enacting it? These moments illuminated the stark contrast between her hopes and current existence, intensifying her desire for transformation while simultaneously heightening her anxiety about what lay ahead. Yet within this turmoil also resided a glimmer of hope, a realization that facing these truths head-on could pave the way for healing and growth, even if it meant traversing through discomfort and uncertainty first. The turning point for Lila arrived unexpectedly one rainy afternoon as she sat in her favorite cafe, surrounded by the familiar hum of chatter and clinking cups. While gazing out at the raindrops racing down the window, she overheard two women at a nearby table speaking about the importance of pursuing one's passions and living authentically. The words struck a chord deep within her, resonating with truths she had been wrestling with but had yet to fully acknowledge. Suddenly, the weight of her own inaction became unbearably clear. Lila's heart raced as she recognized how far she had drifted from the dreams and aspirations that once ignited her spirit. Fueled by emotion, she stood up, gathering her belongings, and made her way home through the downpour. The cold droplets felt invigorating against her skin, as if urging her to shed the layers of pretense that had clung to her for far too long. Once home, she rummaged through old journals, flipping past recollections of ambitions and desires she had allowed to fade into obscurity. Each entry rekindled memories of who she once was, bold and unafraid, and lit a fire within her that demanded action. Lila realized that breaking down the walls wouldn't just mean confronting the reactions of those around her. It meant honoring herself and what truly mattered to her. That evening, when her family gathered for dinner, she decided to voice her feelings for the first time. As she shared her journey toward reclaiming her identity, an exhilarating mixture of fear and courage surged inside her. This was it, the moment she had needed to propel herself into a new chapter of authenticity. No longer could she be held back. This was the beginning of dismantling her walls and stepping into a life that felt genuinely hers. With newfound resolve, Lila began to take concrete steps toward breaking down her emotional walls. The first pivotal action she decided upon was to seek therapy, an option she had long considered but had previously brushed aside due to fear and stigma. Finding the courage to make that initial call felt like a significant victory. It was an acknowledgement of her vulnerability and the seriousness of her struggles. In her first session, Lila was nervous but determined. As she spoke candidly about her feelings of inadequacy and isolation, a weight gradually lifted off her shoulders. Her therapist offered validation and insights that allowed Lila to see her experiences from a different perspective, one that emphasized growth rather than despair. In tandem with therapy, Lila initiated gradual lifestyle changes. She committed to attending a local art class, an interest she had shelved long ago. The thought excited her. It was an opportunity to explore creativity while meeting new people outside her typical social circle. For the first time in years, Lila found herself inspired again as she painted, embracing the process without self-judgment. Additionally, she reached out to old friends with whom she had lost touch, inviting them for coffee and genuine conversation. While some responses varied, some were enthusiastic while others were uncertain, Lila felt empowered by the act of connecting rather than isolating herself. Each small step reinforced her commitment to reclaiming her identity and dismantling the walls that had defined her for so long. With every new experience, Lila discovered a path toward authenticity, a journey filled with uncertainty but also rich with potential for healing and self-acceptance. As Lila progressed on her journey towards self-acceptance, the path to healing was punctuated with both setbacks and triumphs that tested her resolve. In therapy, she would occasionally regress to old patterns of self-doubt, often leaving sessions feeling frustrated and disheartened. One particular week, after sharing a setback related to a confrontation with a colleague, Lila felt a familiar heaviness settle in. Despite her progress, moments of vulnerability had the power to shake her confidence, raising doubts about whether she could truly change. Yet it was within these struggles that Lila learned valuable lessons about resilience. Each time she fell back into negative thinking, she gradually developed skills to redirect her thoughts. During one particularly difficult session, her therapist encouraged her to embrace these setbacks as part of her journey rather than evidence of failure. This reframing began to shift Lila's perspective. She started recognizing that healing is not linear but rather a spiral path marked by growth through challenges. Simultaneously, the triumphs along the way instilled a sense of accomplishment that propelled her forward. The art class became a sanctuary where creativity flourished, and the supportive conversations with friends deepened her connections in unexpected ways. Celebrating those small victories, like vulnerability during a conversation or completing a painting, helped fortify her sense of identity. As Lila navigated through these ups and downs, she understood that breaking down her self-imposed walls required patience and self-compassion. Acknowledging both setbacks and triumphs as integral parts of her healing process fostered a deeper commitment to becoming the authentic person she longed to be. With each step taken, Lila grew more empowered, embracing the evolving journey toward liberation from the confines of expectation. Reflecting on her journey, Lila realized how far she had come since those days of feeling trapped within her own walls. The challenges she faced, both painful and enlightening, had transformed her perspective on life and relationships. No longer did she see vulnerability as a weakness, instead it became a strength that connected her to others. Through therapy and open conversations, she learned that sharing her struggles did not burden those around her but rather invited connections that were genuine and meaningful. As she navigated this newfound authenticity, Lila began to approach her relationships with a sense of openness that had been absent before. Friends who once felt distant became sources of support and encouragement. She discovered depth in conversations that transcended mere pleasantries. The more Lila communicated her needs and desires, the more enriched her connections became, allowing her to feel seen and cherished. Moreover, Lila's relationship with herself transformed dramatically. She no longer measured her worth through the lens of perfectionism or societal expectations but recognized the beauty in imperfection and growth. Each misstep was now an opportunity for learning rather than a source of shame. With each passing day, the walls that once confined her began to crumble. Lila embraced her authentic self, recognizing that it was perfectly okay to be a work in progress. She relished the uncertainty of life and welcomed the spontaneity it brought, a refreshing contrast to the rigid structure she had previously constructed. In this way, Lila not only liberated herself from her self-imposed barriers but also paved the way for a future filled with possibilities and rich relationships grounded in sincerity and understanding. As Lila reflected on her journey, she recognized the profound importance of visibility and understanding in the lives of those who suffer in silence. Throughout her struggles, she had often felt invisible, trapped behind walls that others couldn't see but were all too real to her. This realization ignited a passion in her to advocate for those who find themselves in similar situations, individuals whose inner battles remain hidden from the world. Lila understood firsthand that acknowledging one's struggles is a crucial step toward healing, but it is equally important for others to be willing to listen and provide support. She recalled the dismissals she faced from friends and colleagues, moments that only served to deepen her isolation. Now, more than ever, she felt empowered to create spaces where vulnerability is met with compassion rather than judgment. In her newfound role as an advocate for mental health awareness, Lila began organizing community events focused on open discussions about emotional well-being. She wanted to foster an environment where individuals could share their experiences without fear of being misunderstood or dismissed. Through storytelling and art, Lila encouraged others to express what they had kept locked away, offering them the chance to be seen and heard. Ultimately, Lila's journey taught her that true connection is rooted in empathy and understanding. By embracing her own vulnerabilities, she became a beacon of hope for others, reminding them that they are not alone. In a world where many suffer in silence, cultivating visibility and compassion can shatter the walls that confine us, paving the way for genuine connection and healing.